Greener pastures. Dismayed at the results from the general election, people in the north of England play with the idea of cutting their losses and joining up with Scotland. Outrage over Saudi Arabia's bid for the chairmanship of the UN's Human Rights Council amid concerns over Riyadh's ongoing rights abuses. And citizens in the French region of Brittany give their all to save a statue of Pope John Paul II after a court rules it violates a law on preserving the secular state. 12 o'clock noon on Saturday here in Moscow. You're watching RT International with me, Rory Souchet. From the entire news team, welcome to your programme. When Brits woke up the day after the general election, they learned they would have another 5 years of Conservative Party rule. But the news didn't go down well with everybody. Tens of thousands of people from North England have signed a petition with a wink and a nudge to Star Trek, asking Scotties to beam them up from London. The hashtag #TakeUsWithYouScotland has gone viral on social media. RT's Harry Fear now finding out what is so alluring north of the border.
Welcome to Manchester, one of the UK's largest cities and proudly Northern English. But a growing number of people, tens of thousands, have signed an online petition suggesting that northern cities like Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds become part of a new Scotland should Scotland gain independence from the UK. What do people on the streets think about the idea? Let's find out. If Scotland becomes independent, do you think the north of England should become part of Scotland?
Aye.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Great idea.
Why?
The London just seems completely separate to the UK now. It seems like its own country.
Oh, I'm all for it.
Why?
As long as we get the same benefits as Scotland does.
You like the idea of the north of England becoming part of Scotland?
Yeah, definitely part. Manchester, definitely, yeah.
Oh, awful, no, bad idea.
Would you like to become Scottish?
No.
Do you want to become Scottish?
No, not really.
You don't like the idea of Manchester becoming part of Scotland?
I'm perfectly happy being English.
It's an interesting idea, but it's not going to happen.
Surprisingly, it's almost 50-50 support for and against this idea on the street. So why, after the general election, the incredible rise in this sentiment? Reverend Walsh, you have a broad feeler on this northern community here in Manchester. Why are so many people considering this idea of northern cities becoming part of Scotland if it secedes?
Well, I think it's because many people in the northern cities feel just as much of a disconnect with Westminster politics as the people of Scotland clearly do. And they kind of like what's being said in Scotland. It seems a politics that's more responsive, that's more in tune with the needs of the population, that's talking about real lives, not big business and economy.
It seems every day the UK faces new constitutional questions. But the latest one is certainly, will the north of England ever marry Scotland? In Manchester, I'm Harry Fear, RT.
And across the border, many are ready to welcome the newcomers. Businessman Joe Lafferty, who supports Scottish independence, he says people are feeling increasingly disconnected from Westminster, and not only in Scotland.
The UK as a democracy is at a pivotal point. I think your report I was listening to earlier on was very accurate in the sense that many people feel very disconnected from what is perceived to be an increasingly elite and distant Westminster that's really self-serving and lost touch with people. And I think the historic vote in Scotland for 56 SNP MPs was ground-shaking. The independence referendum was a point in time. I think the 45% was an astonishing result. It was never likely to be a yes majority. I think pragmatically, even people in the SNP would have admitted that. So I think that was a point in time, but I think you need to see this in a trajectory of a longer-term development of politics in the UK and disillusionment.
And our Going Underground programme looks at how some voters who decided to vote Conservative might now wonder if they made the right choice.
People in the rest of the country in average and slightly better off areas have banked their future in their house. That is their pension, that is their savings, that is their hope, that is a little bit of money they can pass on to their children, and they've been told it'll be safe, and large numbers of them have voted for the Conservative Party in the belief that that's true. What the Conservative Party haven't told them is who's going to buy their house off them, because there isn't another generation coming behind them.
It's RT International. Saudi Arabia is said to be lobbying for the place of chairman at the Human Rights Council. Though it's yet to be officially confirmed, the rights group's quickly crying foul, saying at the end of the day that would simply be a cruel joke.
Electing Saudi Arabia as the world's judge on human rights would be like making a pyromaniac a town's fire chief.
It's indeed ironic to see a country that scorns human rights for numerous public executions trying to become the leader of an organization whose mission is to strengthen and protect human rights.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia's human rights record is far from a clean slate. Citizens can be publicly executed for a wide range of reasons, including blasphemy and being gay. Convicted adulterers get lashes, while thieves can have their hands cut off. And non-Muslims and women are also under pressure in Saudi Arabia. We spoke to Ali Al-Ahmed, the director of the Institute for Gulf Affairs. He believes Western states will support Riyadh's push for this kind of influence.
The United States and Europe has not ever criticized Saudi human rights practices in the Human Rights Council. I think that the United States and the European Union will support the Saudi push to be the head of the Human Rights Council. I don't think they will spend any time objecting to the Saudi taking over the Human Rights Council. In fact, I'm very certain that they will support it. They will find a twisted excuse for their support of the Saudi absolute monarchy and its abysmal human rights record. We will see international hypocrisy at its peak.
A statue of Pope John Paul II is under threat in a small town in Brittany. A court has ruled the huge cross at its top is a violation of the law separating the church and state. Authorities have been given 6 months to take down the monument. However, not everyone is welcoming this kind of ruling. A petition has been posted online calling for the ruling to be overturned. It's now got more than 20,000 signatures. And a protest is also planned in the town later on Saturday. Politics professor Hall Gardner says the statue is simply falling victim to a culture war that is currently raging inside France.
If it's really just the cross, then it seems to me a good compromise would just be remove the cross. Why tear down the statue? The problem here related to this particular incident is this concept of laicity, this separation between church and state. And the French government feels that it has to treat all religions fairly and not give any one religion any kind of prominence. Children in the schools can't wear crosses or any kind of religious symbol that's over a certain size. You're allowed to wear them, but they can't be something that's seen as ostentatious or you're trying to show it off or convert other individuals. So this is a kind of a symbolic war going on. And I guess this statue is really another victim of it.
Tensions in the country escalated after terror attacks on the satirical Charlie Hebdo magazine in response to an image they published of the Prophet Muhammad. Hall Gardner says the French ultimately fear the reaction that religious symbols can provoke.
Well, I'd say there is a great deal of tension in French society today. The statue's been there at least 9 years, so you'd think it was already part of the community and part of the environment, and there'd be no reason to remove it. I would say things are getting rather intense. We had warnings throughout France, possibility of attacks of different institutions, religious and others. Just recently. This caused a great fear around France, and therefore it could in fact be part of this general hysteria, fear that any kind of a religious symbol may prove provocative.
All right, still to come here on the program on RT International. The U.S. Secretary of State is in for a torrid time of it in China. He stopped off in Beijing for talks at a time of strong verbal sparring over China's push to extend its influence, albeit in its own backyard. Plus the spectre of violence, anti-government rallies in Macedonia and deadly clashes in the country's north, raising fears of a return to the bad old times of conflict between state forces and separatist groups.